The stars shimmered against the darkness of space as the Earth vessel Defiance glided through the void. Commander Jack Russell sat in his captain's chair, watching the main screen with calm, focused eyes. His ship was on a diplomatic mission, carrying Ambassador Lisa Morgan to negotiations with the Vrexian Empire. It was a routine assignment, but Jack never let his guard down. 50 years since humanity joined the Galactic Coalition wasn't long enough to feel completely safe among the stars. "Captain, we're approaching Proxima Centauri," said Navigation Officer Alan West. "Standard procedure suggests we make a brief stop to realign our jump drives." Jack nodded. "Proceed with the stop, Lieutenant. How long until we're ready to continue?" "About 3 hours, sir," replied Alan. "Very well. Inform the crew they can take short breaks in shifts. I want us ready to move at a moment's notice." Ambassador Morgan entered the bridge, her formal diplomatic uniform crisp despite the long journey. "Always so cautious, Commander Russell," she said with a slight smile. "The Vrexians are expecting us in 2 days. We have plenty of time." "Just following protocol, Ambassador," Jack replied. "Out here it pays to be careful." Little did he know how right he was. The ship slowed as it entered the outer limits of the Proxima Centauri system. The crew went about their duties with practiced efficiency. Some took their authorized breaks while others monitored the ship's systems during the realignment. Communications Officer Susan Lee suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy signatures. 3 vessels just dropped out of light speed. They're approaching fast." Jack was instantly alert. "Identification?" Susan's fingers moved quickly across her console. "Running patterns. Now, sir, they match Crack's radar signatures, 3 warships." A tense silence fell over the bridge. "Pirates," Jack said, his voice low. "Battle stations. Sound the alarm." Red lights flashed throughout the ship as the alarm blared. Crew members rushed to their positions. "Sir," said Weapons Officer Gary Peters, "the Cracks have us outgunned 3-1. Standard Coalition protocol recommends surrender and negotiation when faced with superior Cracks forces." Jack's jaw tightened. "I'm aware of the protocol, Lieutenant." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a harsh reptilian face. The Cracks commander's scales gleamed under the lights of his ship. "Human vessel." The Cracks snarled, showing sharp teeth. "Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Surrender your ship and cargo and your lives may be spared." Jack stood from his chair, his stance firm. "This is Commander Jack Russell of the Earth vessel Defiance. We are on a diplomatic mission and carry a coalition ambassador. Stand down, immediately." The Cracks laughed, a grating sound that echoed through the bridge. "Humans, always so formal. You are outnumbered. You will surrender." Jack turned to his crew. "Susan, open a private channel to engineering." "Channel open, sir." "Chief Miller, how quickly can you get the jump drive back online?" Jack asked. Chief Engineer Frank Miller's voice came through clearly. "At least 2 hours, Captain. We've just started the realignment." Jack nodded. "Do what you can." He closed the channel and turned to Gary. "Arm all weapons. Shield status?" "Shields at maximum, sir, but they won't hold long against 3 warships." "Ambassador." Morgan stepped forward. "Commander, perhaps we should consider their terms. The Coalition can negotiate our release. Your crew—" "With all due respect, Ambassador," Jack interrupted, "Crack's raiders don't negotiate. They take what they want and leave no survivors. That's not happening today." He turned back to the screen. "Crack's commander, this is your final warning. Retreat now, or face the consequences." The Crack's commander's expression shifted slightly. Confusion, perhaps. No one had ever refused to surrender to 3 Cracks warships before. "You have made your choice, human," the Cracks growled. "Prepare to die." The communication ended. "They're charging weapons," Gary reported. Jack returned to his chair. "Evasive maneuvers. Pattern Delta 6. Target the lead ship's propulsion systems." Officer Liz Brown at the helm nodded. "Delta 6, aye, Captain." The Defiance moved with surprising agility for its size, banking hard as the first volley of Cracks. Weapons fire streaked past. "Return fire," Jack ordered. The ship shuddered as it launched its attack. Direct hit on the lead Crack ship. "Their shields are holding, sir," Gary reported. Keep firing. Focus all power on forward weapons. Liz, keep us moving. Don't give them a stationary target. What followed was 20 minutes of intense battle. The Defiance took heavy damage. Engineering reported multiple systems failing. The medical bay was filling with injured crew members, but the humans fought on. Jack ordered unexpected maneuvers, tactics no one had seen before. When the main weapons system failed, he had the crew manually target the enemy ships. When shields began to fail on the port side, he rotated the ship to present its stronger starboard defenses. To the astonishment of everyone, including his own crew, one of the crack ships suddenly exploded. "Direct hit to their core, sir," Gary exclaimed, disbelief in his voice. "Keep going," Jack ordered. "Target the second ship. Same approach." The battle continued. The Defiance was badly damaged, but the crew's spirit never wavered. Jack remained, standing despite a gash on his forehead, blood trickling down his face. The second crack ship lost power after a precisely aimed shot from the Defiance hit its main engine. The third ship, the crack's commander's vessel, began to turn away. "They're trying to escape," Susan reported. "Not a chance," Jack said. "Gary, disable their engines. I want that ship intact." The Defiance fired once more, hitting the fleeing vessel's propulsion system with remarkable accuracy. The crack's commander appeared on screen again, his expression now one of shock and anger. "This is impossible. No species fights crack's raiders. It is suicide." Jack stepped forward, his uniform torn and dirty, but his stance proud. "You chose the wrong ship to attack today. Prepare to be boarded." Within an hour, the Defiance had secured the crack's commander's ship and taken him prisoner. The human crew, though injured and exhausted, moved with efficiency and purpose as they began repairs. Word of the battle spread quickly through nearby systems. A single human ship had defeated 3 crack's warships and captured their commander. It was unprecedented. In the Coalition headquarters on distant Centauri Prime, alien representatives gathered to discuss this disturbing development. The Vrexian delegate, Ambassador Zorzal, spoke what many were thinking. These humans, they do not behave as expected. No rational species would fight when surrender is the logical choice. Perhaps they are not rational, suggested the Moravian representative. Ambassador Zorzal shook his head slowly. No. There is something else at work here. Something concerning. As the Defiance limped toward its destination, now delayed but undefeated, the first whispers began to spread among the stars. There's something different about these humans. Something dangerous. And in 3 galaxies, species began to wonder if they had underestimated the newcomers from Earth. For Jack Russell and his crew, it was simply another day defending their ship. They had no idea they had just changed the way the entire galaxy would view humanity. 6 months had passed since the Defiance incident. The story of Commander Jack Russell's victory against the Crack's raiders had spread across the star systems like wildfire. Most alien species dismissed it as luck or exaggeration. But some began to watch humans more carefully. Lieutenant Samantha Carter stood on the bridge of the patrol ship Relentless, gazing at the stars near the border of the Andromeda Galaxy. At 32 years old, she was one of the youngest senior officers in the Earth fleet. Her short brown hair was neatly trimmed according to regulations, and her uniform bore the patches of someone who had earned her position through hard work. "Lieutenant Carter, Captain wants you in the command center," said Ensign Peter Jones, interrupting her thoughts. Samantha nodded and made her way through the corridors of the Relentless. The ship was smaller than vessels like the Defiance, but what it lacked in size it made up for in speed and maneuverability. It was perfect for border patrol. Captain Eric Boyd was studying star charts when Samantha entered. His weathered face looked up, the scar on his left cheek catching the light. "Lieutenant, we've received a distress signal from a Coalition science vessel," he said without preamble. "They're under attack by the Morgue Collective." Samantha's breath caught. The Morgue were feared throughout the galaxy, a species of cybernetically enhanced beings known for their ruthless efficiency. "How far away, sir?" she asked. "2 light jumps. We're the only Coalition ship in range." The morgue will outnumber us, Samantha said, not as a protest, but as a fact. Captain Boyd smiled slightly. They usually do. Sound battle stations, I want us ready to jump in 10 minutes. As alerts blared through the ship, crew members raced to their positions. Samantha took her place at tactical operations. Sir, she said, should we activate the ghost drive? Boyd nodded. It's time to see if the eggheads back home got it right. The ghost drive was experimental technology, installed on only a few human ships. In theory, it could create energy duplicates of the vessel, confusing enemy targeting systems. The key. Relentless entered light speed, the stars blurring around them. When they dropped out of the jump, the scene before them was grim. A coalition science vessel, the Explorer, was surrounded by 5 morgue ships. Its shields were failing. Comms. Open a channel to the morgue, Boyd ordered. Communications officer, Maria Chen, worked her console. Channel open, sir. Morgue vessels, this is Captain Eric Boyd of the Earthship Relentless. Stand down your attack on the coalition science vessel immediately. The response came in the form of 2 morgue ships breaking off their attack on the Explorer and turning toward the Relentless. They're targeting us, sir, reported Weapons Officer Joe Black. Perfect, Boyd said with a grim smile. Activate Ghost. Drive. Weapons free. Target the nearest morgue ship. The Relentless shuddered as the Ghost drive engaged. Suddenly, where there had been 1 human ship, the morgue sensors now detected 3 identical vessels. The human crew moved with practiced precision. They fired their weapons, each shot finding its mark with surprising accuracy. The first morgue ship took heavy damage to its propulsion systems. Sir, called out Engineer Linda White over the intercom. The ghost drive is straining our power grid. Automated defense systems are starting to fail. Boyd didn't hesitate. Switch to manual targeting. All crew, prepare for system overrides. This was something unique to human ships. While other species relied heavily on automated systems, humans always maintained manual backups. It was slower, less efficient, but in moments like this, it made all the difference. Samantha and other crew members began the process of manually targeting the morgue vessels. It required perfect coordination and timing. The Relentless took heavy fire. Alarms blared as sections of the ship lost power or were breached, but the crew continued fighting. On the third morgue vessel, Commander XK-7, a towering figure of flesh and metal, observed the battle with growing confusion. The human ship should have been disabled by now. Instead, it continued to attack even as its systems failed one by one. Adjust targeting parameters, XK-7 ordered. Focus all fire on the central vessel. But as the morgue weapons locked onto what they believed was the real Relentless, the ghost images flickered and shifted positions. The human ship appeared to be everywhere at once. Back on the Relentless, Samantha worked feverishly at her station. Her hands were burned from where a power surge had overloaded her console, but she ignored the pain. Manual targeting locked, she reported. Firing solution ready for the morgue command ship. Boyd nodded. Fire. The Relentless unleashed everything it had left. The shots connected with the morgue command ship's weak point, a vulnerability the humans had discovered in the midst of battle. The morgue vessel listed to one side, its engines sputtering. And then something unprecedented happened. The remaining morgue ships began to retreat. They're withdrawing, Maria said in disbelief. All morgue vessels are jumping to light speed. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence. The morgue never retreated. Get me the Explorer, Boyd ordered after a moment. The face of an alien scientist appeared on screen. Dr. Zexnar belonged to the Lorian species, tall with pale blue skin and large observant eyes. Human vessel, the scientist said. Your arrival was unexpected, as was your victory. Are your crew safe, Doctor? Boyd asked. Yes, thanks to your intervention. The alien's eyes narrowed slightly. May I request permission to come aboard your ship for medical assistance and scientific observation? Boyd agreed, and within the hour, Dr. Zexnar was in the Relentless medical bay, watching as human doctors and medics treated their injured. The Lorian scientist paid special attention to Samantha, whose hands were being treated for burns. You continued to operate your station despite these injuries, Zexnar observed. Samantha shrugged. We all did what was necessary. Fascinating, the scientist murmured, making notes on a small device. Your species' pain response is unusual, and your adrenaline production. Over the next day, as both ships underwent repairs, Dr. Zexnar conducted discrete studies of the human crew. The scientist's findings were troubling. Humans had pain thresholds far beyond normal parameters. Their bodies produced chemicals during stress that enhanced their abilities rather than diminishing them. And most disturbing of all, they seemed to become more effective fighters when the situation became more desperate. When Dr. Zexnar returned to the Explorer, the first report transmitted to Lorien Space contained a warning. Exercise extreme caution when engaging human vessels. They do not respond to damage or threat in predictable ways. Across 3 galaxies, intelligence reports began circulating among alien military networks. They contained observations, battle data, and a growing concern about the unpredictability of human ships. On a distant space station, a high-ranking Vrexian admiral read these reports with growing alarm. These humans, he said to his subordinate, they fight as if they have nothing to lose, even when they have everything to lose. The subordinate bowed slightly. What should we do about them, Admiral? The admiral stared at the image of the damaged, but victorious relentless. Watch them, he said quietly, and pray we never have to fight them. 1 year later, the grand halls of the Neutral Zone station buzzed with activity. The annual Galactic Summit had brought together representatives from all major species across 3 galaxies. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting rainbow patterns on the polished floors below. Security personnel from various worlds patrolled the corridors, their diverse uniforms creating a colorful parade. Chief Diplomat Paul Garcia adjusted his formal Earth uniform as he reviewed his notes. At 58, he had spent most of his adult life working to secure humanity's place among the stars. His gray hair and lined face spoke of years of difficult negotiations. "Are you ready, sir?" asked Olivia Martinez, his aide. The young woman had a sharp mind and a talent for remembering the complex protocols of interspecies diplomacy. Paul nodded. "As ready as one can be when the Vrexians are looking for any excuse to limit our expansion rights." Outside the station's large viewports, the Earthship Valiant held position alongside vessels from other worlds. Captain Daniel Wright stood on its bridge, watching the security feeds from the summit. "Status report," he ordered. "All systems normal, Captain," replied Security Chief Betty Cole. "Our delegates are safely inside, and we have teams monitoring all access points." Daniel nodded, his eyes never leaving the screens. At 45, he had served in Earth's fleet for over 2 decades. The 3 silver bars on his collar marked him as one of the most experienced captains in human space. Inside the summit's main chamber, representatives took their seats at a massive round table. The Vrexian ambassador, a tall figure with scaled skin and piercing yellow eyes, watched Paul Garcia with obvious distrust. "The summit will now begin," announced the mediator, a member of the ancient Zeth species. "Today we address resource distribution in the Cygnus sector." Paul listened as representatives from major powers presented their cases. When his turn came, he stood with confidence. "The Earth Coalition requests mining rights in the outer reaches of the Cygnus sector," he stated. "Our surveys indicate resources that can benefit all species, and we propose a fair distribution model." The Vrexian ambassador rose immediately. "The human representative speaks of fairness while their ships violate established protocols. We have all heard of the incidents with the cracks and the morgue. Humans do not respect the natural order." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Paul maintained his composure. "The incidents you mention were acts of self-defense," he replied calmly. "Earth ships defend themselves when attacked, as is our right under coalition law." The debate grew heated. Other species joined in, some supporting Earth's position, others expressing concern about human unpredictability. None of them noticed the small changes happening around them. Security guards were being quietly replaced. Environmental controls showed slight fluctuations. On the Valiant, Betty's console suddenly flashed red. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns near the summit chamber," she reported. They match Shroud Collective signatures. Daniel's body tensed. The Shroud Collective was a secretive group known for political assassinations. Alert our security teams immediately, he ordered, and inform the station's command center. But communications were already being jammed. Inside the summit, Paul was in the middle of a response when the lights flickered. The room's temperature dropped suddenly. The mediator stood in alarm. Something is wrong with... The doors burst open, and figures in black armor stormed in. They moved with inhuman speed, disabling the regular security teams before anyone could react. Shroud Collective, someone shouted. Panic erupted as diplomats scrambled for cover. The attackers targeted the main table, their weapons aimed at key leaders. Paul pulled Olivia down behind a fallen column. Stay here, he ordered. Outside, Daniel had made a critical decision. Prepare to dock with the station, he told his crew. We're going in. Sir, protested his first officer. Protocol forbids military vessels from docking during diplomatic events. I'm aware of the protocol, Daniel replied grimly, but our people are in there. The Valiant moved toward the station, its engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. Inside the summit chamber, the remaining security forces struggled to contain the Shroud attackers. The Rexian ambassador was pinned down, a Shroud operative closing in on him. Without hesitation, Olivia darted from cover. She tackled the attacker, buying the Rexian precious seconds to escape. The Shroud operative turned on her, weapon raised. Paul fired his emergency sidearm, hitting the attacker in the shoulder. More Shroud forces converged on their position. In the corridor outside, a wall exploded inward. Through the smoke stepped Captain Daniel and a team from the Valiant, armed and ready. This ship has initiated emergency protocols, Daniel announced. All diplomatic personnel follow my team to safety. The human soldiers engaged the Shroud forces with surprising effectiveness. When standard weapons proved ineffective against the attackers' shielding, they switched to physical combat tactics. When communications jammers blocked their coordination efforts, they fell back on prearranged signals. The Shroud, accustomed to quick assassinations against unprepared targets, found themselves facing an enemy that adapted to each challenge. On the Valiant, Betty reported a new threat. Captain, 3 Shroud vessels have decloaked. They're targeting the station's life support systems. Daniel made another decision that would later be discussed in military academies across 3 galaxies. Move the Valiant to intercept. Put all power to forward shields. Sir, his first officer protested again. That will leave our engines exposed. If they target, do it, Daniel ordered. The Valiant positioned itself between the Shroud ships and the station, deliberately making itself a target to protect the delegates. Inside the summit chamber, the battle turned in favor of the human security teams. Olivia, despite a wound to her arm, helped the Vrexian ambassador reach safety. You risked your life, the Vrexian said, his voice a mix of confusion and grudging respect. It's what we do, Olivia replied simply. The Shroud attack was repelled, though not without cost. Several diplomats were injured and the summit chamber was heavily damaged. The Valiant had taken serious hits protecting the station but remained functional. Hours later, as medical teams treated the wounded, a private meeting took place in a secure room. Leaders from 7 major species gathered around a small table. Need to discuss the humans, said the Moravian chancellor, his crystalline form glittering in the low light. Their ship violated protocol by docking during a diplomatic event, noted the Zeth mediator. Their ship saved our lives, countered the Vrexian ambassador, and their aid saved mine personally. It is the human paradox that concerns me, said the Lorian representative. They place their vessel at risk to protect others, yet they fight with a ferocity we have not seen before. They are unpredictable, agreed the Rexian, and that makes them dangerous. Or valuable, suggested another. The debate continued long into the night. No consensus was reached, but one thing became clear to all present. Humanity was becoming a force that could not be ignored. On the Valiant, Captain Daniel sat in his damaged ready room, drafting his report to Earth Command. He knew the diplomatic fallout would be complex, but he had no regrets about his decisions. What he didn't know was that across 3 galaxies, military strategists were already updating their protocols regarding human ships. The new guidance was simple: avoid confrontation, whenever possible. 2 years passed. The incidents involving human ships had not been forgotten. If anything, the stories had grown with each retelling. Some said Commander Jack Russell had defeated 5 Crack's ships, not 3. Others claimed Captain Boyd's Relentless had taken on the entire Morgue fleet. Few knew the exact truth, but all species now watched human vessels with caution. Admiral Catherine Burke stood at the large viewport of her command ship, the Guardian. At 60 years old, she was the highest-ranking officer in Earth's defense fleet. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform bore the numerous medals of a lifetime of service. "Admiral," called out Communications Officer Jason Allen, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Coalition headquarters." Catherine turned from the viewport. "Put it through to my private office." In her office, Catherine watched as the holographic message played. The Coalition Security Council appeared, representatives from 12 species seated in a semicircle. "Admiral Burke," began the Zeth representative, "we face an unprecedented crisis. The Hive Dominion has issued an ultimatum to all Coalition worlds." Catherine's expression remained neutral, but her mind raced. The Hive Dominion was the most powerful force in the Orion arm of the galaxy. A highly organized insectoid species, they had remained isolated for centuries. Until now. "The ultimatum is simple," continued the representative. "All worlds must submit to Hive authority within 30 days or face extinction. Their armada has already begun moving toward Coalition space." After the transmission ended, Catherine called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. Among them were analysts Kevin Peters and Rebecca Taylor, both specialists in alien communication patterns. "What do we know about Hive military capabilities?" Catherine asked. "Their fleet outnumbers the combined Coalition forces 3-1, replied Fleet. "Commander Scott Williams, their technology is advanced, particularly their hive mind coordination systems." Kevin Peters cleared his throat. "Admiral, Rebecca and I have been studying Hive communication patterns. We believe we've found something important." Rebecca nodded. "The Hive uses quantum entanglement for instant communication between ships. It's what gives them perfect coordination in battle. But the system has a vulnerability." "Explain," Catherine ordered. "The quantum link requires a specific frequency modulation to maintain stability," Kevin said. "If we could disrupt that frequency, we could break their coordination advantage," Catherine finished. For the next 3 days, the Human Defense Fleet prepared a bold strategy. When Catherine presented it to the Coalition Security Council, the response was immediate. "This plan is suicidal," declared the Vrexian representative. "You propose to engage the Hive Armada directly?" "With a specific approach that targets their weakness," Catherine replied calmly. "Even if this vulnerability exists," said the Lorian delegate, "your fleet would need to get within the Hive's inner defense perimeter to exploit it. None of your ships would survive." "That's a risk we're prepared to take," Catherine stated. Durin. Council debated for hours. In the end, they refused to support the human plan, instead voting to attempt diplomatic negotiations with the Hive. Catherine returned to the Guardian with the news. "So the Coalition is surrendering," Scott said, his voice tight with anger. "They're exploring diplomatic options," Catherine corrected, though her tone suggested she shared his assessment. "What do we do now, Admiral?" asked Rebecca. Catherine looked at her senior staff, each face showing the same determination she felt. "Earth has never been one to wait for permission when lives are at stake. We proceed with the plan." The Human Defense Fleet, consisting of 57 vessels, departed Coalition space the next day. Without official sanction, they headed toward Eor, the approaching Hive Armada. At the Cygnus boundary, the massive Hive fleet became visible. Hundreds of ships, each perfectly aligned with the others, moved as a single organism through space. On the bridge of the Guardian, Catherine addressed her fleet. Today we face an enemy that believes in absolute conformity, absolute obedience. We represent something different. Each of you commands your vessel in your own way. Each of you brings your unique perspective to the fight. That diversity is our strength. That adaptability is how we will win. The human fleet split into 5 groups, each with its own target and approach vector. The Hive responded immediately, its ships moving to intercept. "They're adapting to our formation," reported Scott. "As expected," Catherine replied. "Commence. Phase 2. The human ships suddenly changed tactics, each group adopting a different approach. Some engaged in direct confrontation, while others performed complex evasive maneuvers. The Hive forces, accustomed to enemies that followed predictable patterns, struggled to respond effectively. Phase 3, Catherine ordered, as the human fleet penetrated deeper into Hive formations. Kevin and Rebecca activated the special transmitters they had developed. These devices broadcast on the exact frequency that the Hive's quantum communication network used, creating disruption. The effect was immediate. The perfect coordination of the Hive ships faltered. Some stopped moving entirely, while others began firing on incorrect targets. But the human victory came at a heavy cost. The Guardian took massive damage as it pushed toward the center of the Hive formation. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, reported Damage Control Officer Natalie. "Kim?" "Shields failing," Catherine nodded. "Maintain course." Throughout the fleet, human crews demonstrated the same determination. Ships continued fighting despite catastrophic damage. When primary systems failed, they switched to backups. When backups failed, they improvised. Every meter of space was contested. On the Hive command vessel, Supreme Director Vex Nar observed the battle with growing confusion. The human ships should have retreated by now. Many were critically damaged, yet they pressed forward with increasing intensity. "Their behavior defies logic," Vex Nar stated to the command circle. "They cannot win, yet they refuse to accept defeat." "Perhaps victory is not their objective," suggested Subdirector Kivton. As if confirming this assessment, the human vessels suddenly concentrated their fire on a single point in the Hive formation, creating a narrow corridor straight to the AR command ship. The Guardian, despite its damage, accelerated through this gap. Behind it came 3 smaller vessels, each carrying a portion of the disruption device. "They target our command link," Vex Nar realized too late. On the Guardian, Catherine gave her final order of the battle. "All ships, maximum disruption. Target the command vessel's communication array." The combined energy of the human fleet focused on a single point. The Hive command ship's array exploded in a burst of light. Across the Hive fleet, ships suddenly lost their perfect coordination. Some began firing on each other in confusion. Others drifted aimlessly. To the astonishment of everyone watching from Coalition space, the Hive fleet began to retreat. Hours later, as the human ships limped home, emergency repairs underway on all vessels, Catherine received a transmission from the Coalition Council. "Admiral Burke," said the Zeth representative, his tone respectful, "the Coalition owes you and your fleet a debt that cannot be repaid. The Hive has withdrawn its ultimatum." Catherine acknowledged the message and ended the transmission. She looked around her damaged bridge at her injured but proud crew. Across 3 galaxies, the story spread rapidly. The human fleet that fought when all others would have surrendered. The ships that, despite overwhelming odds, had forced the mighty Hive Dominion to retreat. And the legend grew: never engage a human vessel unless victory is absolutely certain. Because human ships, unlike any others, never surrender. 5 years had passed since Admiral Burke's fleet defeated the Hive Dominion. Peace had settled across the 3 galaxies, though it was an uneasy peace. The reputation of human ships had grown to near mythical status. Some stories were exaggerated, others understated, but all contributed to a simple truth. Species throughout known space now avoided conflict with human vessels whenever possible. Commander Michelle Allen stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Discovery, watching as her ship approached a massive structure floating at the edge of the 3rd galaxy. At 38, she was considered young for her command, but her record spoke for itself. The Discovery was Earth's most advanced exploration ship, designed to push the boundaries of known space. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" she said to Science Officer Greg Johnson, who stood beside her. Greg nodded, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. "Nothing in our database matches this structure. It appears to be a space station of some kind, but the design is unlike anything we've encountered." The structure before them was enormous, easily 10 times the size of Earth's largest space station. It seemed to be built from a dark, reflective material that absorbed rather than reflected light. It had no visible windows or conventional docking ports. "Life signs?" Michelle asked. "None detected," replied Medical Officer Carrie Nelson from her station. "But the station's outer shell seems to be blocking our deep scans." Michelle made her decision. "Prepare an exploration team. Let's find out what this place is." Within an hour, Michelle led a team of 6 specialists onto the station. They had found what appeared to be an entry point, a section of the wall that responded to their proximity by creating an opening. Inside, the station was even more impressive. Vast hallways stretched in all directions, illuminated by a soft, blue light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air was breathable, though stale. "This place has been abandoned for a long time," Greg said, checking his scanner. "But the environmental systems are still functioning." The team moved deeper into the station, documenting everything they found. Most rooms were empty, their purposes unclear. But then they discovered something remarkable. "Commander, you need to see this," called Greg from a large circular chamber. Michelle entered the room and froze. The walls were covered in intricate symbols and images, a historical record of some kind. "Can you translate any of this?" she asked. Greg nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of excitement and concern. "Some of it. These symbols are similar to fragments found on ancient ruins across all 3 galaxies. They belong to a species archaeologists call the predecessors." "The predecessors?" Michelle had heard the name in scientific circles. "The species believed to have achieved interstellar travel before any other?" "The same," Greg confirmed. "According to legend, they once ruled all 3 galaxies before mysteriously disappearing." The team spent hours documenting the historical record. Greg worked tirelessly to translate key sections. "Commander," he said finally, "I've found something disturbing. These records mention another species, one the predecessors feared. They called them the resilient ones." "What about them?" Michelle asked. Greg's voice was hushed. "The descriptions, they sound remarkably like humans." Michelle stared at him. "That's impossible. Humans only achieved interstellar travel a century ago." "According to our history, yes," Greg agreed. "But look at this." He pointed to an image on the wall, a depiction of bipedal beings fighting against overwhelming odds, continuing to battle despite injuries that would have stopped other species. The text describes these beings as continuing to fight when logic dictated surrender. Greg translated. "It says they adapted to every strategy, improvised solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable." Michelle felt a chill run down her spine. "It could be a coincidence." "There's more," Greg said. "The predecessors dominated 3 galaxies until they encountered the resilient ones. A war followed, a war the predecessors lost despite their superior technology and numbers. As they continued exploring, they found more evidence. Detailed biological data on the resilient ones matched human physiology with startling accuracy. Historical accounts described battles that sounded eerily familiar to recent human victories." "How is this possible?" Michelle wondered aloud. "If humans fought a war across 3 galaxies, why don't we remember it?" Their exploration was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Discovery. "Commander," came the voice of communications, "Officer Ben Harper. We're detecting multiple ships approaching our position. 12 vessels of different designs, all heading straight for us." Michelle's team returned to the Discovery immediately. On the bridge, she watched as the approaching fleet surrounded their position. "They're hailing us," Ben reported. "Open a channel," Michelle ordered. The view screen activated to show an imposing figure. Grand Admiral Zeltaric of the Rexian fleet was known throughout Coalition space as a formidable military leader. "Human vessel," he began, his tone formal but not hostile. Your presence at the predecessor station has activated certain protocols. Michelle kept her voice steady. We are on a peaceful exploration mission, Admiral. We meant no offense by examining the station. No offense is taken, Zeltaric assured her. However, there are matters that must be discussed. Request permission to come aboard your vessel. Michelle agreed, though she ordered security precautions. Within the hour, representatives from 12 different species sat in the Discovery's conference room. Grand Admiral Zeltaric led the group. Commander Allen, he began, what you have discovered today was meant to remain hidden. The station you explored contains knowledge that has been carefully guarded for thousands of years. Knowledge about the resilient ones? Michelle asked directly. Zeltaric's expression showed surprise before he composed himself. You have learned much in a short time. Are you saying that humans are these resilient ones? Michelle pressed. The Admiral exchanged glances with the other representatives before answering. Yes, though you do not remember it. He explained that human civilization had indeed spanned 3 galaxies over 10,000 years ago. They had fought and won a devastating war against the predecessors who had ruled as tyrants over other species. But the war nearly destroyed all civilization, Zeltaric continued. In its aftermath, humans made a decision that no other species would have made. They voluntarily regressed their technology and erased their own memories of the war. Why would we do that? Greg asked. To give peace a chance, replied a Lorian representative. Humans recognized that their victory would only lead to fear and eventually another war. So they returned to their homeworld and started over, allowing themselves to evolve again naturally. All spacefaring species know the 3-galaxy protocol, Zeltaric said solemnly. Never engage a human vessel in combat unless victory is absolutely certain. It was established after observers noted that even without your ancient memories, humans still fight with the same determination, the same adaptability that defeated the predecessors. Michelle looked around the table at the representatives of 12 different species. You've been watching us, waiting to see what we would do when we returned to space. Zeltaric nodded. For millennia, the galaxies have held their breath. Would humans remember their past? Would they reclaim their position as conquerors? Or would they be something new? And what have you decided? Michelle asked. We're still watching, the Admiral admitted, but the signs are promising. You fight only when necessary. You seek to protect rather than dominate. As the meeting concluded, Michelle stood at the viewport of her ship, looking out at the ancient station. Humanity wasn't a newcomer to the stars after all. They were returning conquerors who had chosen to forget their own power. And every species in 3 galaxies remembered what humans had forgotten. They remembered why no one dared to attack a human ship,